It says we are live. Andrew Gold, how are you, sir?
Really good. Good to see your face looking so pristine and high definition.
Yes, thank you. I figured out how to use a virtual camera and everything, and it's all working. Hopefully we won't have audio problems and everything like that. Hey, before I get into my first subject here, I have to say I have been watching your videos this last week, and they're absolutely incredible. Like, seriously,
shut up.
The production quality on your videos is insane. It's insane.
What are you talking about?
I don't know. Like, and then I have to remember, wait, you are like a professional in the industry. Like, even, okay, when you go to your video, it has that video, the autoplay, like, I'm Andrew Gold and I'm the da-da-da-da-da. I watch your production quality and I'm like, oh, fuck, I got to up my fucking game. Oh, wait, I can't say the F word too soon. Anyway, any viewers of my channel, and also Andrew has done some of the most hilarious Scientology videos lately, like especially on the Tom Cruise stuff, just incredible stuff. And you make me want to go out. You make me want to go out and get some light bulbs for my background and everything. Actually, I told my kids, I said, hey, kids, now that I'm a real YouTuber, should I get like a custom-made neon sign for the background? They said, you better not, Dad. You better not. You better not get a neon sign. I don't know. That would just be.
How old are they?
16, 14, and 12.
Yeah, it's that age, isn't it? Anything you do is embarrassing at that age, isn't it?
So, but I'll tell you what. So I titled this video, "When Will Scientology Throw Danny Masterson Under the Bus?" And I got to tell you, I think the answer is Scientology is not going to get an opportunity. The prosecution has Danny pinned, nailed to a cross so firmly. Scientology is not going to have an opportunity to come into the prosecutor and be like, hey, look, you think we could, we'll help you out here if you just don't prosecute us for obstruction after the fact. If I were the Deputy District Attorney Mueller here, and if Scientology came to me offering me a little bit of advice or a little bit of a hand at all to seal the fate of this case, I'd be like, go take a hike. I don't need your help. We got this sealed up.
Well, is that the latest then? Is that, I haven't spoken to you for a couple of weeks, so I don't know what's going on. Obviously, Tony Ortega's super busy. He's the man on the ground. What has happened in the last few days? Have you been keeping up with it all?
So there was no court for Monday and Tuesday. So yesterday was, so essentially that's what, 4 days off from the trial, and testimony resumed yesterday. And I've been catching up on Tony's updates today. I swear to God, the defense, the way I say it, the defense has not scored a single point. They put no points on the board at all. Wow. Like in their opening statement, they made such a show of describing the inconsistencies and the omissions, and the stories are changing over time. And the victim said this to officer and something else to another officer. And it sounded like they really had something that they were going to come with. And so far, every inconsistency that the defense team has questioned the victims about has come down to errors and omissions in how the officers and the detectives themselves have written their reports.
Yeah. And
you have to go, we're 2 weeks into this damn thing, and the defense has nothing at all. So, and honestly, that was really going to be Scientology's best play here, is that if they could help the prosecution seal this case up, maybe secretly, maybe behind the scenes, maybe slip them something, who knows? I'm sure that's not legal, but I'm just saying Scientology doesn't really care that much about what's legal and illegal, that they could possibly get the DA to go, okay, we're not going to go after you for your obstruction of justice in this case because you helped us send Danny away. But the prosecution's been doing such a great job. The victims have been phenomenal in keeping it together in the stand, not losing their cool, not getting flustered. Cohen really has been trying to fluster them and get under their skin. And yesterday, Jane Doe 2, I know who Jane Doe 2 is. She's the one of these victims whose name is never leaked in the press.
Okay.
Her testimony was even more compelling and fluid and coherent than even Jane Doe 1 and 3. And I thought 1 and 3 did a fantastic job. But Jane Doe 2, I was like, oh my God. And then she mopped the floor with Philip Cohen on the cross and the recross. Just mopped the floor with him.
And is Masterson just sat there the whole time? Has he got his mask on, sort of looking Hannibal Lecter-y, watching?
I don't think they're still wearing the masks.
Okay. Because all the pictures I can find of him on Google for my thumbnails, he's got a bloody mask on, and I'm torn between, is that good for a thumbnail because he looks so scary and mad, or bad because you want to see a mouth and sort of facial expressions?
I decided never to use the mask because I want people to he has a very recognizable face, and yeah. So that's why I've never used the mask photo. Plus, he looks like Hannibal Lecter. I don't know what he was thinking going into court. I'm looking at your thumbnail right now. I don't know what he was thinking walking into court like that. He looks like he's going to eat someone's face off.
I know. I think they actually put him on one of those wheelie things. He had his hands behind his back and was just sort of nodding for a while. Just a look he's going for at the moment. You say he's got a recognizable face, but his hair is the most recognizable thing about him, isn't it?
Well, that's true, and that's kind of what I mean. And it's funny. Well, I've been using up until now. I've been using some of his younger photos in the thumbnails, and I actually just yesterday went and found some of the more recent ones. I'm like, oh boy, this boy's looking rough these days. My God, I almost don't want to use the newer thumbnails because he doesn't look good.
No, but I guess I mean people don't need to know how the sausage is made, but you want like a weird face that sort of gets people. If any eyes open, mouth caught in a weird moment, that gets people clicking. And I don't know why that is. You guys are the ones who watch us. You tell us why you click on weird faces because you really do. But going back to the what you were just saying about the court case, it's interesting. I haven't seen many court cases. I'm not a court lawyer or anything like that, so I don't know, a court journalist. Sorry, I don't know much about that kind of thing. But I've watched a lot of movies, and it does seem to be that whenever they don't have a leg to stand on, they go for the sort of technicality. They try to get off on a technicality. And I know making a murderer, they sort of went for that kind of thing. The police made a mistake, someone made a mistake, something's gone wrong. And at the moment, the latest thing I saw, I don't know if you've seen it or if it's just coming out, was they're going for Leah Remini because she's tweeted so much about it. So they're trying to get off on that because she's made the case biased now.
I meant to do a video about that yesterday, but there's just so many things I want to talk about. I didn't even get around to that. Yeah, I mean, the day of court started by the defense attorney complaining that Leah Remini had sent out a lot of tweets about the case the day before.
32, I think.
Yeah, well, she did one of these things where she wrote this big old write-up and then took a bunch of screenshots of it and sent it out as like a 15 photograph Instagram post. They kept saying Twitter. I didn't see it on Twitter. I saw it on Instagram, but who cares? And all it did was basically lay out everything she's already said in the past and that's already been reported. I don't know. She must have been in a bad mood. I don't know what happened. I mean, but Leah put out this whole thing. And but just imagine being a defense attorney. You already know that the jurors aren't allowed to read anything in the press. And you're like, I don't think they actually asked for a mistrial, at least to be fair to them. I don't think they said, Leah sent out a bunch of mean tweets. We need a mistrial.
Yeah. This man now doesn't have to go to prison for what he did because the King of Queens lady tweeted things. I know. It's not how justice works, I suppose, is it? What she said was Leah has been accused. She's been accused of denying their client a fair trial because she tweeted a 36-point tweet about the trial. Says attorney Karen Goldstein. Goldstein was my name before my dad changed it he had to change it because of anti-Semitism and stuff. Oh, wow. But would she be a Scientologist then? This lawyer Karen Goldstein.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, that's interesting, isn't it? It's a really interesting thing, and I want it to be this way. I like that there's a judicial system where people who are bad people get fair help and they're represented, by who that has to happen. It's even more important, I think, for bad people that we don't like than for anyone else. They need to have a fair trial. But it's still a really interesting thought, isn't it? Like, I'm a lawyer, just doing my job, doing whatever I do, and then tomorrow, I'm just going in to sort of defend this. I won't use the R word here, but from an abusive cult, and now she's doing that, and I wonder how that is for her at the moment.
I know, it's one of these things where I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could be one of these defense attorneys who represents the worst of the worst, and yet there is something virtuous about upholding that pillar of the justice system, that if the justice system doesn't work for the worst of us, it doesn't work for any of us. So there's something virtuous about it. Oh, but do you want to be the guy who's just known you represent Bill Cosby and O.J. Simpson and, I mean, the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world, the even worse, the Danny Mastersons of the world?
Yeah, even worse. I think maybe you'd get a bit of a thrill out of it. I think what happens is I've done a lot of work. Not work. It sounds like I'm some sort of scientist, but I've interviewed people about the status game, and we all have a different status game. And I think status game is very directly linked to cults as well. It's a way of getting different kinds of status. And I think the three main types of status are dominance. You can be a really dominant bully. You could success. So if you were dominant or successful in your tribe, evolutionarily, people would give you food and stuff. If you were dominant, they give it. If you built the wheel because you're a successful person, here's some food and all that. But the third way is virtue. So you get like virtue signalers and stuff like that. If you are able to show the tribe that you're really nice and you've helped, even if you aren't nice, but you can show them you are, then you get food. And I wonder if people like that who represent awful people, they just say to themselves, well, look, I'm never going to win the virtue one anyway. I don't care. I'll just do whatever the hell I want, and I'm just going to focus on success and dominance. And then they don't care about the virtue side.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I think there's an honorable way to go about it. Like if you were to frame it, like if you were a defense attorney, and you're defending the worst of the worst, and you were to frame it like, look, my job is to be serve as a bulwark against just tyrannical abuse of the system, and if the only thing I've accomplished is I've forced the prosecution to actually prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, then I've helped make the system work the way that it should work. Now, where it gets into some nastiness is, and I interviewed a lawyer this morning on my channel who pointed out that the defense has thus far stopped short of actually victim blaming, except they did go there a little bit yesterday. But and I guess where I'm going with this is that there's an honorable way to do this job and a dishonorable way to do it. And it does seem like Philip Cohen is so far, he's being pretty honorable about it. And I realize at the same time, I'm criticizing him for it because I'm kind of saying he's doing a shit job.
Which one's Philip Cohen? Because this is Karen Goldstein I knew about. Who's Philip Cohen? Is she also Danny?
He's the one who looks like my slightly fatter twin brother.
Very handsome, but slightly chubby. I'm thinking of what's his name? Brendan Fraser, is that his name? He's just put on a lot of weight for a film. Yeah,
and he's not clean shaven or bald.
No, but he's got like your kind of face, and if you put on weight, I think you could.
Brendan Fraser. Yeah. Good sir, he looks nothing like me.
Well, maybe you're just both American sounding. So to me, my brain puts it all into the same thing. I just read an article about that yesterday. I really want to watch that film. Okay, so this
new film is The Whale, right?
Yeah.
The Whale. Yeah, he gained a ton of weight for that role. Unless,
he also wore a fat suit.
I saw that, but I haven't seen any of the footage from the film. I just saw him on stage, and I was like, "Dear God, what has happened here?"
Oh my God. Yeah, it's sad.
But anyway, so no, Philip Cohen, actually, I was using him in a thumbnail, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this guy looks just like me. And so I've been a little unfair to him, to be honest, because the truth is he's doing a respectable job as far as not beating these witnesses up. But at the same time, like if I were paying him to defend me, I'd be like, you are doing a horrible, horrible job. Like no points on the board. That's my take on it.
Wait, so just to verify that he's on the Masterson side?
Yeah, he's the defense attorney, the main one.
Yeah, well, it's a hard position to be in because I think if you do start victim blaming, the society that we have at the moment, and it's probably a good thing, would just completely turn against him and he loses the case immediately. So
I think you hit the nail right on the head, especially in Los Angeles, where, and this is what the attorney I was speaking with this morning was saying, is like, you start victim blaming in LA, that you've lost the jury immediately. And in fact, it does seem like that's kind of what happened. Philip Cohen seemed to recognize he was losing the jury and just immediately backtracked and actually said, no more questions, Your Honor.
Oh, but also blaming the victim is a very Scientology thing, isn't it? Is it called pulling it in?
So pulling it in, yes. Pulling it in is it's sort of it's how Scientology kind of spiritually thinks of things. We've probably touched on this before, but it might bear a little bit of repeating. You have in Scientology like the administrative side of things, the technical side of things, and sort of what we could call the spiritual side of things. Like, okay, let's say, just strictly speaking, ethics. If you do something to me, you stole money from me, and I write a report on you. Andrew Gold stole $100 out of my desk drawer. The ethics officer is not just going to come to me and say, you're in trouble for having pulled this in. I mean, there is a system of ethics and justice in Scientology. You know, you can report people for doing things to you, and they are held accountable. However, on the auditing side of things, this is what I meant on like the spiritually speaking. It would, a Scientologist who believes in, you know, everything in the subject, and an auditor would go, if something happened to you, even if the other person, you know, was legitimately at fault in the situation, you have done something on your whole track, meaning your past lives, present to past lives. You've done something to pull that in. And just for the sake of your spiritual health, your spiritual fitness, you would be very well served to have an auditing session and identify what that was, so that you can basically just fix that for yourself and make it less likely to occur again. And yes, Andrew's a bad guy, and he'll make up amends, and he'll, you know, do whatever. But this just handles your side of it. See, that's the key. Scientology would say, yes, there's an aggressor. Yes, there's a victim, but spiritually speaking, both played a role. And I do have to be honest, I bristle a little bit when I hear the media talk about this, because they do present it in a way where it seems like there's not, that Scientology doesn't even consider there is such a thing as an aggressor, that all victims are sort of the aggressors. And I go, God, that's such a lazy way of talking about this subject. I understand not all journalists are going to give a whole freaking Scientology explanation every time they write anything about it. But you might you might know what I'm talking about. Like, some of the coverage of some of this stuff does make it seem like there's no such thing as an abuser in Scientology. I mean, am I overstating it?
No, you're not. Well, look, that was my impression, because that's what I've read. So until you tell me otherwise, you know, you're in a very unique position where you really know. And it's really interesting to hear that. I've just learned something. We've talked a little bit about it before, but I didn't know really that. But I do gather that there's sort of this, they would still rather deal with it inside, which is typical of all sorts of cults and religions, rather than the WOG, they call it the WOG sort of laws.
The WOG world, WOG law. Everything I'm saying is still applies in a world where Scientology will handle everything internally. Like, there's nothing you could do. There's nothing a Scientologist could do to another Scientologist where the Scientology official would intervene and go, this needs to be reported to the authorities. That is never on the table. We could be talking about stuff with children. We could be talking about even stuff to Scientology itself. If a staff member were found embezzling money from the org or stealing money from the org, that would still be handled internally. That would still not be reported to the authorities. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not. Yeah. Obviously there is a cynical and yet true reason of, hey, we don't want our dirt exposed. But it's also true that they also don't find any value. They don't think the criminal justice system adds value to anything. Okay. They don't. And they do think Scientology can ultimately fix anything that's wrong with anybody. Yes, there's a self-serving aspect of this whole policy, to be sure, but it does come from a place of true belief. Of Scientology can fix anything that's wrong with anybody, and there's no reason to involve the criminal justice system because, like you just said, that's WOG law. That's WOG. They don't have the tools. They don't have the tools to really help. You know, right? Okay, so where was I going with that? Yeah, that's right. So it's not that Scientology doesn't have the concept of abuser and abused. It's that even the abused, in order to feel better about everything, to feel like it's been resolved, to feel like they've put it behind them, to feel healed, has to spot what they've done themselves prior that was like that. So if Danny commits SA on a Scientologist woman, that woman in her auditing would without a doubt be having to address instances when she in past lives committed SA on other people as well, without question.
Wow. So you end up in it. If you're putting my mind into their mind for a second, they're sitting there, that's happened to them, and they have to then make themselves imagine, which I suppose I can imagine myself doing that. I have an imagination, and if I believed in this kind of folklore or whatever it is around Scientology, if I really was a true believer, I believe I could do that. So that's what they're doing. They're imagining a past life, and they really would believe that.
Oh yeah, and the e-meter plays a role in helping them believe it. right?
So sad.
So if the auditor was sitting there with the pre-clear, the person getting the auditing, and they're encouraging them to, find an earlier similar time. Well, this was already when I was 3. I can't remember any earlier. And the auditor would be like, well, take a look. I'll help you with the meter. Take a look. And then the auditor would be like, there, what's that? What are you thinking of there? Yes, what's that? What's that? What are you looking at there? Oh, I'm just getting a general idea of something. Go ahead. The auditor does not care whether this is imagination, fiction. The auditor just needs you to come up with something. For the love of God, come up with something, because otherwise this auditing session is stuck and we're not going anywhere till right? Like, you can't just get up and end an auditing session. You have to finish the auditing session through to a good end result. So the auditor, even if you're like, I don't think it's real, it's just imagination, the auditor is still going to encourage you to go, yeah, but what are you looking at? What is it? What is it? What is it? And then he's going to basically use the e-meter to essentially help convince you that that's not imagination, that that's real. And even if you think it's an imagination, he'll have you go ahead, just tell me anyway. What are you seeing? What are you thinking? And that's how the e-meter is used to convince people that they're having actual past life recalls. And the more they get comfortable with that, the less help they need from the auditor, the less help they need from the meter, right? And eventually you have someone who's just like, 13 billion years ago in a galaxy far, far away, I molested an Ewok. And I mean...
Not really that.
But they could say whatever the hell they want to say.
But they don't say Star Wars stuff. Do they?
You can say anything.
Oh man, it reminds me a bit of there's a description in Mike Rinder's book about when he was in the hole, and basically they were all in the hole and they had to just scream at each other like, what have you done? And if you couldn't invent something, they sort of spat at you and kicked you and stuff, and you weren't ever allowed out.
That is a very uniquely weird and unusual thing that occurred. One of the reasons those stories are so insane is because almost no Scientologist would even believe that could occur. That is such insanity. Like, those group seance interrogation sec checks, that's like a function of Miscavige's just disgusting imagination of how can we possibly hurt these people? What's the worst thing we could do to these people? That's not normal, but that's why those stories are so incredible, is because it is so unusual. And the fact that the craziest shit was happening at the highest level of management makes those stories even more fantastic.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, because you would have thought the people at the top are all just, they're just getting by and they're fine, while the people at the bottom are having to do all the legwork. And actually, I guess David Miscavige is most jealous and envious and worried, like Stalin, I suppose, keeping all the people around him. And Mike Rinder said it felt very much that way. Whenever you felt like you were on a high, he would knock you down and show you like you're nothing. They threw him in a lake in November, just threw him in a lake.
Yeah. And that was after the pool. Remember, he had him jumping in the pool, and he was like, this isn't degrading enough. Let's have him jump in the lake that's full of sewage.
Wow.
And so what you're describing there, those group sec checks, being forced to come up with things, being forced to have an answer to a question. There's a lot of auditing. There's a lot of types of auditing where the person is in that situation. They have to come up with something. There's something about being in an auditing session as a pre-clear and knowing you can't leave this auditing session. Like, I mean, imagine auditing is supposed to be therapeutic. At least that's how Scientologists think about it, right? But imagine being in a therapist with an actual therapist in an actual session that you're paying for and feeling trapped and you can't get out. And it's very weird. It's very weird. And I got to tell you, until recently, I would have said there's nothing like it. It's hard to describe. I've been watching the Vow on HBO about NXIVM.
Yes.
And I'm like, this might as well be about Scientology. In fact, this is going to sound weird. I almost feel like the way the NXIVM story is told in the Vow is even having more of an impact on me as a former Scientologist than seeing all of the stories of the people I know on the Scientology in the Aftermath show.
That doesn't surprise me, and the reason for that, because I've interviewed on my podcast channel Kelly Thiel, who's one of the people. I think she's in The Vow. I'm not sure if she's actually one of the speakers on there, but she was in NXIVM, and I looked into that quite a lot. And I'm writing a book as well. It's not out for a while yet, but it's about the psychology of secrets, and part of that is about how cults use secrets and secrecy and those kinds of things. So I've really done a whole look into NXIVM, and NXIVM's Keith Raniere, who was the head of that, he really did look up to Scientology, and he was an expert in neuro-linguistic programming and all that kind of thing, and he stole things. So even I think e-meters are in NXIVM, and there were quite a few. I think he talks about the tech. There's quite a lot of words that he literally just stole from Scientology. The interesting thing with NXIVM was they didn't need. It showed that to have a cult, you don't need to have the religious law bit, because all you need is the promise of it. So because Scientology, you go in and they don't tell you what it is. We all know it's the Lord Xenu stuff, right? But you're not supposed to know that till you're like, and it's really funny because now Scientology has to go, no, it's not that. But then people get to the levels and they go, no, it was that actually. Okay, well, the Raniere one, NXIVM, was the same thing. They just said, we've got a big secret. We'll let you into that club when you've done enough classes and enough money and all that stuff. And this one, instead of all that law around it, this was just have sex with the leader. That was what it is. You come in, you get branded with a pole, and then you have to do that with the leader.
Yeah. Again, this is going to sound weird, but I'm watching this NXIVM stuff and I'm like, Keith Raniere perfected this shit even better than L. Ron Hubbard did.
Yeah.
Like they are doing and believing all of the craziest shit I could ever, tell you about Scientology. And yet they actually seem happier than Scientologists seem. They have more freedom of thought and communication than Scientologists have. I'm like, wow, this guy was he was really going somewhere in the cult world.
You know what then? I've got a question to the audience. If you want to see me host a talk between Erin and Kelly Thiel from NXIVM, I'll ask her if she's interested. Put a 1 in the chat now. If you don't want to see that, put a 2. Be interested to see what people think. Would you be interested in that, Erin?
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. What I've been doing so far as I'm going through the vow, because it's too much for me to try to do like a reaction to the whole thing. I'm writing down every episode and the timestamp of where they say something that is 100% like Scientology, and then I'm just going to do a sort of compilation video at the end. So I'm watching, paying very close attention, and I'm being very disciplined with my notes. So I should be able to finish it relatively soon. Did I see a second season just dropped recently of The Vow?
I don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure. And so that would be fantastic.
Have you seen the level of ones here in the chat?
Oh yeah, look at all that. Look at all that.
They want it. I think that would be great. I've just written a note here. I'm going to email Kelly afterwards, and we'll. I'm sure she'll be up for it. She's a fantastic interviewee, and she went through all of that stuff, and I bet she'll be up for it. Talking with you, Erin, about the similarities and the differences.
That would be great, because I'll tell you what. Some of the recordings, all these audio record. Have you seen it at all? You've seen them?
No, I haven't, because I don't think it's not on like Netflix or anything, is it? It's on like an American-y thing.
HBO.
Yeah.
Or at least that's where I'm watching it. Okay, so all these audio recordings were made for years and years and years, and all these conversations. And so you have people, some audio recordings of people who are already having doubts, already leaving, and they're talking to former members and expressing their doubts. And the fact that they're even able to have this conversation without being immediately shut down, like the person that's still in NXIVM is willing to hear what the person who left is saying without attacking them, and without insulting them, and without making accusations. Like, I'm like, these guys are actually allowed to talk to former members in this way? That's even more freedom than they had in Scientology. Yeah. And
it's still scary though, man. There's still a lot of from the way Kelly tells it, for example, and we'll get her on and we can ask her about it. But she just she got ill from it. She started to develop weird. She was so stressed from being in there, from having to lie to people. And like I say, I mean, it's one thing to go onto several levels of Scientology and you learn about thetans and things like that. But in NXIVM, you get to that level, they take your collateral and then they make you do that stuff with the leader. And that's,
No, let me be clear. When I say that's even more freedom, I don't mean, oh my God, NXIVM wasn't as bad as Scientology. What I mean is Keith Raniere perfected his system even more so than L. Ron Hubbard in Scientology, because Keith Raniere was able to operate this destructive cult without even clamping down on all of his members the way that Scientology did. And I realized it sounded like I was saying, oh, it's not.
No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I didn't mean to suggest you were
refined and perfected the system he came up with. And so, do you know, Mike Rinder did actually, this was a few months ago, he was up in the Vancouver area and he met up with Mark Vicente and Sarah Edmondson, who are the two primary, I'll say, stars of the vow. And they told him, like, oh yeah, no, Keith studied Scientology, but I got to tell you, I have to find out, what did he study? When did he study it? Where did he study it? Because the similarities between these things are just mind blowing. And I got to tell you, when I said, it's even more impactful as a former Scientologist watching the vow than it is hearing some of these other Scientology stories. Sometimes and somehow, seeing something that's analogous to what you went through instead of exactly what you went through somehow is able to get through your mental bullshit more.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. You know,
that really does, man. I do want to respond to a point you were saying before, though, because if NXIVM was a sort of better cult, let's say, it only lasted a few years and he went to prison, whereas Scientology has lasted decades. So they would argue, if we were sort of immorally saying which is the better cult in terms of how it controls people, Scientology's winning by a mile in that respect.
That if NXIVM had religious tax exemption by the IRS, they would not have been taken down the
right. But Scientology got that by being all culty.
Yes. So remember, so Scientology, they were fighting for their very existence when they waged war with the IRS. And, you know, and again, I'm only about 4 episodes into the vow thing, and I haven't seen anything spiritual or religious yet. So I wonder if they ever even had any designs. Like now I'm wondering, like, were they a nonprofit? Like, I know they didn't have religious recognition, but I wonder, like, were donations to NXIVM tax deductible? Now I'm wondering, did they have any designs at all on trying to eventually get tax exemption or anything like this?
So when I was writing, I don't know, I haven't heard anything about tax exemption, but I do know that they sort of, it's a really weird thing I remember reading, that they try to disguise themselves as a multi-level marketing company, right? But I just thought, doesn't a multi-level marketing company usually disguise itself as something else? Like, it's not a good thing to disguise yourself as. It's basically a pyramid scheme. I imagine there are slight differences between pyramid scheme and MLM, but not really big one. I mean, that's a cult, basically, MLM, as far as I'm concerned, without the religious side to it. So they sort of hid in plain sight, really, there.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm 4 episodes in, maybe just beginning the 5th. And I do see that, you know, Sarah Edmondson is saying she was able to make a really good living bringing people into NXIVM. But I haven't heard how like if NXIVM is an MLM, they haven't spelled that out yet. You can make money getting like Scientology. You can make money getting people into Scientology, but only one level deep. So Scientology is not an MLM. Like, if I get you into Scientology and you get someone else into Scientology, I don't get credit for the guy you got in.
Okay.
I get credit.
I think we'd need someone like Kelly in here, but my understanding was that NXIVM is that way, that it is like more and more and more. But I might be wrong about that, so we'll have to speak to her. We'll have to change the title of this to NXIVM versus Scientology. Okay. Oh, you change it after. After. Totally. People will love that. I think so. Yeah. Oh man. And what you were just saying before as well about somebody who's like gone through something quite similar. I think one of the reasons, because I wasn't in anything that was really a cult or anything like that, but I did grow up in like a Jewish family, and I had to go on Sundays every Sunday, and none of my friends at school had to because they weren't Jewish, and I had to go and like learn Hebrew, and I had to go, and it got a little bit, I don't want to use the word culty, I suppose, because there was no leader or anything like that, but it did get a little bit like I had to go. I was forced. I felt a bit forced. I didn't like the traditions. I didn't like the icons and the rituals and all these things. And when I get to interview people who are from an extreme Mormon background or anything like that, I am much more interested, just like you say, in going like, oh, you guys had to do a sort of thing like that as well. It's a sort of brotherhood thing, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever interviewed Steve Hassan?
I tried to, and I didn't get a response. I got a response from like someone on his team, and it didn't quite happen. Why? What are you thinking? The bite, but he'd be good, wouldn't he? Bite model.
Well, no, I mentioned that because his story of how he was recruited into the Moonies and how the thought control and the behavior control and the information control in the Moonies, it was actually reading that book that was so much more eye-opening for me than anything I had read up to that point about Scientology. And the fact that it was about something different than Scientology somehow is what, in my opinion, allowed that book to really impact me. And so anyway, since you interview so many people who are involved in cults and whatnot, his story about the Moonies, I think you would find fascinating.
Wow, I do need to get him. Maybe I'll email him again. He has been criticized as well. I mean, that's anyone. You put your head above the parapet. You know, for some of his sort of political views and things. And
that's true. He did a whole thing. He goes hard in the paint on Trump and everything. And I will, I guess, criticize it by saying I think it's always a mistake to mix politics with anything. And but again, I mean, who am I? I'm just giving you my opinion. Like, the thing is, he talks about cults and he says Trumpism and MAGAism and whatever is a cult. And it very well may be, but then I have to go, okay, but professionally speaking, you've just alienated half the people who might have wanted to work with you.
Yeah. It's a lot of people.
I think it's a mistake, strategically speaking, not intellectually speaking.
Yeah, well, I'm not a fan of Trump either, but I think you're right. Like, we have to remember, it's like half of America voted, well, or maybe not half, but you know what I mean. A huge millions and millions of people, and I suppose there are cultish elements, but I feel like there are cultish elements on the other side as well, and that's where I've not seen Hassan talk about that. And I just thought, you need to be. To really be that guy at the center of this stuff. And maybe I would ask him about that if I ever had him on. You need to be able to look at both of them with your centrist or your moderate hat on and say, hey, that's really bad, the Trumpy stuff, but so some of the Antifa stuff. And all of this can be, maybe you can even have a culty kind of centrist. I'd be interested to hear about that.
Totally. And that would actually be a fascinating conversation to have. I mean, because, I mean, look, this is the world that we're living and working in. So, and when you're talking about the world of cults, it's almost like if you're going to pick on the right to the exclusion of the left, well, that's kind of a problem. And if you're going to pick on both, why pick on any of them? Like, just stick to cults that aren't political. But anyway, but like, who am I to criticize? His
no,
approach?
But
maybe
you've lived through things. You've lived through a cult itself, and your opinion's completely relevant.
No, totally. But I'm saying, perhaps professionally speaking, he's already thought this through, and he's comfortable with the direction he's taken himself. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I just think that's why I don't go. I'd love to make more political jokes on my channel, but I don't, because people don't come to me for politics. I don't want to alienate them with politics. And it's true. Steve has gone. Well, in fact, I think he wrote a whole damn book about Trumpism. I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah. But anyway, you can talk to him about that. I'll shoot him. If you're not getting a response from him, I'll shoot him a message. I can reach Steve. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, please do. Then there might be a reason he didn't want to. Who knows? I sometimes do fairly politically things, fairly on both sides. I try, I mean fairly as in not justice. I mean just in terms of tiny bit. And I've just done one on the Proud Boys about the worries about them, and that's a right wing one. But I've done quite a few as well on some of the lefty stuff. But the problem is, as you say, I then sort of elevate myself as this as somebody in the comments that are enlightened centrist. And again, like, who the hell am I? What the hell do I know? I just try. I guess all you can do is think I'm probably wrong about stuff, and I don't know which bits it is.
Everybody wants to be the enlightened centrist.
Yeah.
Well, I guess for Steve Hassan.
Oh
Steve.
Man.
So I'm a big fan of Steve. I recommend his book Combating Cult Mind Control all the time. And I will be honest though, when I saw that he wrote the book about Trump, I don't really give a shit what someone thinks about Trump, but I do remember thinking, oh boy, that might have but I guess I keep talking myself in circles. He's a very smart guy. So he clearly decided, professionally speaking, he was comfortable going this way. But then what happens when you want to deal or help people who are leaving a cult but are very right-leaning, conservative? now you got a problem though. Like now you've got political baggage. But that's a question I would love to ask Steve about, or you can ask him if you get a chance before I do.
That's a great point. For me, it was just I was already biased because I think he'd ignored my email. So I was feeling biased. And then I saw some tweet he put out, and it just was with a lot of certainty. And I remember thinking, but his whole thing was about how you shouldn't be too certain with yourself, you know? And I thought, not sure. I'm sure had he replied to me and come on my show, I'd have seen it with a much kinder, recognition or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by my own biases.
We could do a whole series of moderated interviews and stuff. We could do Nexium. We could do cult stuff. We could do Steve Hassan. Maybe we could
oh my God.
Could do a whole lot of fun stuff.
Like a weekly thing or something.
I met Steve at at an event in Philadelphia. I'm going to there's some cult. Oh my God, there's like this cult it's not cult awareness. It was a forum. I spoke at this thing. It was a panel for second generation former cult members. And it was me, and it was Chris Shelton, and I want to say it was Christy Gordon.
Okay.
God, I hope it was really Christy Gordon and I'm not leaving someone out. And anyway, and Rachel Bernstein moderated, and it was in Philly, and we did a thing, and Steve Hassan was there, and it was the first time I was meeting him in person, and meeting him was fantastic. So I'll see if I can get a hold of him and make an introduction, and we'll do a thing.
Yeah, we could do a 3-way thing, like in a platonic sense. Do that. Let's do that. So I've written it down. We've got Kelly Thiel, Steve Hassan. We'll do that. Put a 1 in the chat if you would like Erin and I to do Steve Hassan 3-way interview, and put a 2 if you would not like that. I want to see what goes on there. I've had a thought for a while that, to an extent, we have to be careful, you and I, because we do a lot of YouTube-y stuff about cults and things. But I've often looked at YouTube YouTubers as a little bit culty. And and obviously it's not the same, you're not coerced to stay, but there is some pressure to stay once you've developed a bit of a community. And on the scale of cults, I'm talking about a 3 out of 10, But I remember I did a course on it, and it was like a daily, loads of 1s, by the way, they want us doing it. We're doing it. Steve Hassan knows. It was like this course, and it was like each day was a new thing you learn. And like day 1 was rituals. And it was like, if you want to do it, you've got to have certain rituals, which is, look at my lights behind me. Or those would be icons. So icons, rituals is like you start the show the same way each time. Welcome, hey, you're on the edge with Andrew, or something like that. Certain language you're supposed to use. My guys on the Edge with Andrew, they come in and they call themselves edgehogs, which somebody suggested. And it was my favorite word ever.
That's adorable.
Yeah, but they're words that others might not know, and it's like they have to learn the language to be part of it. And then the big one was non-believers, and I saw a lot of very big YouTubers doing this. They would have arguments with other YouTubers, and it would be the podcast wars, and it would be like, he's the bad guy, and everyone would sort of take sides. And all of these things are elements of cults. And we have to be a little bit careful, and we have a responsibility, I suppose, especially because you've just hit 100,000, Aaron, I think, haven't you?
I did. I hit 100,000 subscribers today.
Oh my God, congratulations.
That was a big deal for me.
Are you going to get the silver thing?
Eventually. I don't know how long it takes them to send it out, but
no, you got to apply.
I'm going to you have to apply for it?
Oh yeah, go apply right this second. What are you doing on here? Go and apply for the plaque.
Yeah, but don't you think some of those YouTube wars and the cults of personality and everything, cults of personality are some of that's just sort of for the drama and the views, though, don't you think?
Yeah, but that's why this thing was teaching me. It was like, do these things that happen to be a bit culty. And that will get you drama and views. And I suppose that non-believer one is drama and views. But that thing, I just loved. I couldn't believe it when I was reading it, because I'd just been reading so much about cults. I was reading Amanda Montell's Cultish, which is a book I love. And I was just like, I had just bought these lights, and I was like, oh, have I got icons? Am I a cult leader?
Did this thing really say that the lights are like an icon?
I can't remember exactly what it said, but I remember like each thing was a different day, and icons was one of the days, and it was saying like, have things, be the guy with the turtleneck, be the thing that is your wooden background. Like, you might want to get lights there, you might not, but that wooden background, that head you have, people are going to remember that. That's important.
Yeah, so I'm looking at moving into a new space to film, and I was like, I gotta keep my wooden background.
Yeah.
Like that's my thing now. My identity is wrapped up in this wood wall back here. Although I'm okay with getting rid of the couch. But I'll tell you, it seems like all YouTubers have shelves behind them filled with knickknacks and dolls and lights.
Well, one in particular.
And a pillow.
Fellow ex-Scientologist, Chris Shelton's got all the. Chris.
It's funny. Some of Chris's camera angles, he's got the little dolls on his desk, and other ones he doesn't. I'm not sure if he does different themes for different shows, but I think I know what you're talking about.
Lovely
but
dolls.
Like there'll be like a play button pillow like right here on a shelf, and so I have resisted the urge. That's why I was like. But sometimes I see someone that's got a cool neon sign, like Kyle Kalinski's got a neon sign. And I'm like, what if I was like, because also my channel's growing up in Scientology. I'm like, but maybe I should change it to just Aaron. Maybe I should change it to my name and have a neon sign. And my kids were like, you better not. You better not.
I think, you know what, this is a discussion for us to have soon, but I think you could just change it to your name. I copy a lot. You've got to copy. You've got to look at people you really admire. I admire a guy called Chris Williamson, who had a Modern Wisdom podcast. And it's different topics now that he's gone into than what I would. But he had lights behind him a little bit like mine, and they look quite pretty, and I liked it. And he had this nice camera. He's got the same, I asked him what camera and all that kind of thing. And, you know, anyway, we've got to go over to my channel, don't we now?
Oh my God, we do. Hey, everyone, we're going to continue this conversation over on Andrew Gold's channel. It's name of the channel is On the Edge with Andrew Gold. As soon as I stop this live stream, it should redirect you right to the other scheduled event that we have. So, and then when we do the chat over there, which is going to be right now, at the end of that, we'll do a Q&A.
Yeah, that would be great. I really want to hear what like people are thinking. We're going to interact with everyone about the cults and Nixium, and we need to talk a bit more about Danny Masterson. We just got sidetracked, didn't we? So that's going to be great.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, good. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and continue on over with us at Andrew's channel, On the Edge with Andrew Gold. Bye.